Okay, Jasper's apology is kinda the standard fare for this. I supported their growth, not the previous actions, again. Yeah, fair, whatever. He says that he understands people disliking his decision and that he viewed Jester Frog as two kids putting themselves in danger. I mean, to be honest, kinda. The victim was in danger of being groomed, and Jester Frog was in danger of being exposed. He says that his views were apparently tainted through his own trauma and that he's already basically ready to be hated. Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. He then says that he forgot to unfriend Jester Frog because of his ADHD, and apparently even had the same thing happen with his own abuser. That does certainly explain it, but it can be read as a cheap excuse. He then keeps talking about his bad mental health and how he is not a lolly or a shotacon, and ends it with moving on from the account and saying that he doesn't want to be defended. He talks about wishing to have been talked to first, and about something happening in March, which again we'll get to. And until now it was all normal, but this is where it starts getting weird. Niuchrome, the director and creator of Sonic.exe Rerun, suddenly calls him out for drawing NSFW of people's characters, some of those people being minors, without consent. Again, we'll get back to that. Now, for some reason, she didn't call out Avery too for not giving a shit, considering it's apparently a problem. Honestly, the reasoning Nayu gives in these screenshots for why it's a problem is also fucking weird, and I'm uncomfortable. Bro, the world doesn't revolve around you. A sentiment of theirs that will also matter later. It then ends with confirmation from Avery that Jasper doesn't do it anymore. Wait, then why the fuck are you calling him out on it? And why do you do it 2 months after this convo, while he's already been called up for something actually fucking noteworthy? Fuck off, Nayu. Like, she isn't even a special case. Jasper got so much shit from so many people that he ended up having a mental breakdown or 3 and being mocked for having a quote-unquote Joker arc, which I'll admit I was also kinda guilty for back then. It was met with fucking apathy by people like KG and we'll get back to you, you piece of shit. Now, how this would have been supposed to go is just an apology, the community's reaction, and that's it. But the way everyone reacted and the way Jasper talked about this leaves me a few sudden questions. 1. What the fuck happened in March? And about that, Avery spoke of March and the DMs Nayu leaked, so is it connect to drawing NSFW of the Minor's character? Next, why the fuck was Jasper so ready to be hated? Like, saying something about it having happened before. Third question, why did Nayu talk to fucking Avery about being uncomfortable with Jasper instead of, with Jasper himself? Fourth, why did Nayu bring those old DMs out either way if it was apparently already resolved? 5. Why did Jasper have such a bad breakdown while everyone else in the Jester Frog situation just left normally, gave a response and stayed, or just ignored him? And, last but not least, why was that breakdown met with apathy? The quest to answer these fucking questions led me down a massive rabbit hole. This is probably going to be like the longest chapter in this fucking video. So strap on, let's do this. Okay, so in March, everything started with a twit longer made by KG, so we're off to a great fucking start. Jasper is immediately bombarded with the following accusations: mass manipulation, possible faking of OSDD, over-sexualization of characters made by minors, creation of pornography of characters without creator consent, public NSFW content with easy access, no reinforced management of NSFW channels regarding the protection of minors, and fictional glorification of abuse. Immediately the twit longer mentions some previous posts being deleted, which, fantastic, we didn't need full context anyway. But those are still a lot of claims about Jasper, so how about we check the reasoning out? Okay, first, that whole shebang about the OSDD thing, which is short for Other Specified Dissociative Disorder. It's, similar to DID but not the same thing. That has some issues. 1. No diagnosis doesn't mean it's fake, it just means it's undiagnosed. Next, the speed of the splitting also doesn't mean anything. Everyone's neurodivergency is different, you are not a fucking psychologist. Third, multiple witnesses with OSDD, DID is vague as shit, and talking so vaguely about witnesses is one of the oldest lies in the book. Also, people with a disorder aren't automatically experts on it. A heart attack survivor ain't a fucking heart surgeon. Then something sexualization of characters owned by minors, who fucking cares? Look, until Jasper actually sexualizes a minor, please shut the fuck up. Separate art and artists for fuck's sake, especially if the characters are adults. Then some point about lewd depictions of other creators' characters without consent? What kind of point is this? Let me just ask Sega per mail if I can use Sonic for porn, since apparently creator consent is needed for fan works. Seriously, I do get the sentiment of putting creators first, especially indie creators, but this is fucking stupid. Why would you call someone out over this? Next up, the NSFW account not being locked. I just want to preface this by saying, literally 99% of NSFW accounts on Twitter are not fucking private. You know, you just get blocked if you follow as a minor. And yeah, makes sense. Not everyone wants to follow in order to look at the porn. That's literally how this works. People need to judge this shit for themselves. Seriously, why are you bringing this shit up specifically against Jasper? Oh, and if you really cared about the safety of minors, why did you not censor it and instead just bring more attention to that fucking account? Next up, some point about the server having no restriction of NSFW channels, instead just a role rather than the age restriction that is integrated into Discord. This one's actually a valid point. Congratulations! The first one out of 5 so far. Next up, Curse's story is straight up called abuse glorification. I don't think I need to tell you this is fucking stupid, but let's talk about it. 1. Vent art is a thing, you dickheads. Like, it just exists. Let people get their emotions out that way, and their feelings and everything else. Next, it's not romanticized in the slightest. The whole point of Curse is to show how fucking terrible abuse can be. That's the whole story. And yes, that point about Curse being essentially Jasper's second Sona may be correct, but irrelevant. That still doesn't make this abuse glorification. That's the end of the twit longer. We do get some statements by Kenny and KGBpus. Of fucking course Kenny is involved in this. And let's just quickly go through them as I have a thing or two to say. Now, on Kenny's statement, he says that he also started the investigation on Jasper and Uptaunt alongside KG. Uptaunt is definitely warranted, but Jasper really isn't. He says that he won't let people feel unsafe, pressured, or scared due to others, but will most certainly make everyone fear him by continuously spreading lies about people like Jasper and Infinite, thus forcing people to fall in line for him. And yes, we'll talk about Infinite later. I did not do this with ill intention. Yeah, then why the fuck did you lie, Kenny? We found an entire hell of a mess I was not expecting. You made one seemingly good point, and I'm just waiting on making my rebuttal in a second. I'm not happy, I'm not proud, I'm disappointed. Oh, fuck off, you bold motherfucker. For those who believe I took the wrong course of action, I will not debate or offer rebuttal. Wait, Kenny, I think this phrasing doesn't get your point across well enough. Let me fix that for you. I will not acknowledge any and all criticism you give me. There, fixed it. Leave Tia and me alone. We feel betrayed by Jasper, he was like a brother to me. And that's why you spread bullshit like this and never talk to him directly. Right. I am still grappling with the facts of what was brought to light. How fucking overdramatic can you be? Remember, one good point. Alright, next up KG's statement, let's get into it. Now apparently, this is just a call for Jasper to seek help. Sure buddy, that's where you spread nonsensical claims. You are responsible for the recent sexualization of the EXA community. Bro, Kenny literally helped you with this twit longer. And Kenny made Rebooted. Leave all platforms, drop your public image. Wow, you really just asked him to give up his current life like that over complete nonsense. You are no longer welcome in the EXA community. Well, at least you cunts know that you manipulated it into something that you few people can control. You will be dropped from all projects you are associated with, and I will see to that personally. Okay, first of all, this line would actually be justified if Jasper did provably do something wrong, which just doesn't seem to be the case. This way it just makes KG looks like a psycho, and it won't be the last time he looks like one. Okay, after these two horrendous statements, we have a massive Imgur thread, which I'll also go through now. It's basically the evidence for this twit longer, so I guess it's important. Let's get into it. I'll skip over anything I have nothing to say on because it's either empty or whatever. Okay, the fourth image has something interesting. It talks about the lack of strictness in the NSFW rules, but like, the rules are crystal clear. Nothing was enforced. Yeah, fair point, but it's not really proven either. And now again, the role thing actually has a reason I'll get into, but for now, why the fuck didn't you talk to Jasper about this first? Then the seventh image is about coercion, apparently, but the other person agrees to it, so I don't know if that really counts? Then 7 through 12 all take place strictly in the NSFW channel. Just like, keep this in mind, everything NSFW here happens in the NSFW channel. Then 7 and 10 are literally repeat evidence, this one's just fucking random. And the 12th one just shows that asking nicely is apparently coercion now. The fuck? 13 through 18, the claims about the NSFW account were stupid enough. This just makes him look even dumber somehow. Having NSFW unlocked is nothing new. 17 and 18 are proof that Jasper actually listened and privated the NSFW account, which is apparently a bad thing? Then 19 through 21 is this without permission bullshit again, and it looks even dumber in practice, just like the unlocked NSFW account. 22 through 24, like, wow, exes really aren't allowed to be horrible people anymore. I was fucking right when I said that last time. Then 25 through 34, can you guys seriously shut the fuck up? This is not glorifying abuse in any way, it's made to look as horrible as possible. Like, seriously, you see it in, like, 29, that Curse's story is a fucking melodrama. Sure, but that ain't something to cancel Jasper over. It's a genre. And then, like, the claim of 31 is just hilarious. Strictly negativity, no healing process. A, not every fucking story needs to be positive, you twat. Like, that's literally the beauty of fiction. And B, this literally shows Curse having someone to support him. That's literally part of the healing process. Then, okay, next up, 35 through 38. Why the fuck is a non-therapist acting like they know how quickly someone with OSDD can have splits? Again, everyone is different in this shit. And then with number 39, here's something interesting for you. Trauma is not a necessary factor for splitting, just the most common cause for OSDD and DID. Splits can happen for many different reasons. Do some fucking research, please. So, that's the March situation. A bullshit tweet longer with one point that doesn't immediately fall apart. And I'm now left to assume that this is what led to such a community outcry that Jasper was ready to be hated. Now, while I am not sure if the community outcry was actually that bad, because I wasn't there for it, I was definitely there to see the fallout the Exaburner callout had on Jasper. His mental health was just fucked, and he eventually went over to fucking 4chan. Okay, so imagine this. A whole community turns against you, and you kinda lose everything. And the last safe haven you have is a 4chan board. And then you end up having a fucking breakdown on it. That's not a good breakdown. That was really not great. When I found out about it, I went over to the board and decided to give him some, life advice alongside my brutal honesty. Because, I think that's the best way to show that I'm genuine with this. The whole situation genuinely fucked him over, and he even realized that he was fucking borderline through it. The situation ended with him getting better, and after a bunch more things I won't share, he and I got into contact on Discord. I will now show you what he had to say in a, let's call it an interview with me. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm just going to be sharing Jasper's explanations for his own actions. This is not me excusing them, I'm still rather critical of them. It's the same sentiment of supporting his growth, not his actions. I just want him to have a voice after it was taken from him so often. Alright? The Jester Frog situation was out of ignorance, not malice. Jasper takes full accountability and is aware of his mistakes. He did look over the Jester Frog exposed doc, but didn't fully understand it, and it led him to false conclusions. He didn't even properly realize that CP was involved. Then he also says that the ADHD part of the apology was apparently just read wrong. It was just an explanation, not an excuse. Now, if anyone actually accepts it, is up to them. My own judgment will remain unsaid. Okay, next I brought out that weird ass comparison he did on 4chan, Jester Frog and Revy under the name Ferret. He did say it was both a genuine concern regarding Revy as well as just him being petty over some personal squabbles with her. He is willing to admit that the concern was unrealistic as the comparison was just 3 months after the original callout, and that change just doesn't happen that quickly in humans. He is now indifferent and says that both him and Revy will just stay in their lanes, not clashing with each other. Then we talked about that tweet longer, and he says that role locking a channel overrides the NSFW lock. That does make me ask why it was even role locked, but yeah, okay. He also admits that he never ID checked anyone, which he now does in his personal friend server. But most of the other claims are still fucking random bullshit, so don't think that Kenny and KG actually made some good points. Also, funny thing, Kenny and False Cow, who's also involved in this mess, never confronted Jasper because they were apparently scared of him. What the fuck? But he took it to the public first? Okay, seriously, Jasper is the least scary person in the whole fucking community, I swear to God. I'm not buying that excuse. Fuck off. Then we discussed Nayu's completely random call out, and he just says that he didn't even draw actual porn, just slightly suggestive art. If you squint, we'll get to that suggestive art soon enough. He didn't even have any suggestive intentions in that art, which, yeah, he didn't. Again, we'll get to that art piece in a second. And that it's based on the assumption that people in the adult chats were minors, which is a weird ass assumption. And again, that idea of it's a minors OC is still fucking stupid and doesn't change a thing. He goes on to speak about how people do everything except for actually talking to him, and it's, become a recurring thing. Speaking of people who refuse to talk to him, we next discussed Kenji and his apathy. Now, Jasper apparently thought that they were close, which, isn't that just fun to have someone you think you're close with make that fucking twit longer on you? Jesus. But then, eventually, Kenji admitted to liking neither Jasper nor Curse. But he was just never transparent about it until he was fucking confronted, which is just kinda disgusting. Seriously, how hard is it to be honest about that shit? When I then comment on the sudden switch and how the community treated him, he showed me tweets of him telling people to quit fucking white knighting him. Apparently his fans almost got someone to fucking kill themselves. It was Kenny, as after Jasper was proven innocent from the March Twitlonger, people were rightfully angry. By the way, can I just say that it's ironic how Kenny would later be involved in an infinite situation, but again, we'll get to that later. Next up, I just kinda mentioned the Joker arc offhand, but it turned out that that was actual, genuine self-sabotage. In case you didn't notice it yet, Jasper was insanely mentally fucked from all this. He didn't have any meds, no sleep, no food, nothing really ever since the Exeburner threat. He lost over 50 friends, turned out to have borderline, and has abandonment issues that people fucking knew about. Christ! And I guess on a lighter note, Jasper did give Curse away to someone called Madman, who we'll also get to later. But eventually, after my talk with him, Jasper came back for a moment with a proper apology for all his mistakes. He just really wanted to be held accountable for them. He decides to remove himself from as many spaces as possible and now actively goes to therapy and is trying to improve himself. I can vouch for that, by the way. He says that he is tired of running away and will now force himself to be better. He apparently even tried to kill himself, which opened his eyes to that. No more self-sabotage and no more self-harm. He will be better. All in all, I think this is a fantastic apology. It's just too bad it got deleted due to terrible responses. Wait, egophobia? Weren't you in Hell, Michigan? A server that also housed Chester Frog? Like seriously, you've both been called out for the same shit. Fuck off, you twat! Okay, so long story short, Jasper gets mistreated way too much. Straight up, this is just as bad as Revi, if not worse. But now that I went down this rabbit hole, I can answer the questions from the start. What happened in March was a Twitlonger full of wrong or shit accusations. Jasper was ready to be hated because shit like that Twitlonger caused tons of harassment before. People not discussing their issues with Jasper himself is a recurring issue. Only known reason for that is that bullshit about being afraid of him, which I still don't buy. I have no idea why Nayu brought that disproven shit back up. She's just a petty piece of shit, I guess. Next, Jasper's mental breakdown was so bad because this was a fucking cycle of abuse against him by now. And it was met with apathy because people apparently just really like mistreating Jasper. So that's it then, rabbit hole solved, right? Okay. Speaking of people who own Curse getting harassed. Wait, what the fuck is this document? Discovered concerns regarding Jasper May and Uptaunt. Interesting. Wait, 133 pages? What the fuck? Okay, first things first. I just want to remind you guys that Jasper is a heavily abused and mistreated member of the exit community, while Uptaunt is a sexual harasser that was still supported long after that was known. That makes these two people a weird fucking duo to talk about. But let's check this doc out and see what it has to say. Also, this will be heavily summarized. Otherwise, this chapter alone would take at least 2 hours. Something of note here is that, just like with every other False Cow doc, this is not fucking downloadable. So if there was outcry, they could just easily delete it without any trace of it left. Because that's an option honest people always need to keep open. It's apparently also a response to another document by Avery. Whoa, great, this really can't get any more complex, can it? Okay, let's then quickly talk about Avery's doc. Now, this doc is a response to KG's Twitlonger. Avery goes on to say that he doesn't condone drawing NSFW of OCs without the owner's permission, but once again I have to ask who the fuck cares. But they also do believe that it should have been addressed better. Now apparently Jasper never publicly advertised his NSFW account, meaning that minors probably wouldn't even know of it, unless they saw it in the call out post, so congrats Kenny and Kenji, you really protected the minors there. Next up is just an obvious point that curse isn't abuse glorification, it's venting and a coping mechanism. Genuinely, what the fuck was the thought process behind this shitty point? Oh, here's something interesting about that sexualization of a minor's OC. It wasn't NSFW at all, the character is aged up to around 30, and the owner fucking asked for it. Now, Kenji and Kenny apparently still contacted the owner about it, apparently found out that they asked for it, and still made that shitty accusation. And this was confirmed by Bomnon. If you don't know who that is, it's an artist that's rather reputable in the exit community. Also, fun fact, Kenny lied about contacting Jasper ahead of time and him not cooperating. Okay, no, I need to expand on this. First of all, he admitted to being the guy who started all this while saying that he contacted Jasper and only got denial. He said that about him, both publicly and privately. Meanwhile, their actual only instance of contact was a call about Jasper's interactions with Kenny's fiancée, Tia, which was also made unnecessarily public, by the way. Jasper later tried to reach back out the next fucking day, but got fucking blocked. Jojo, Chad that they are, tried to resolve this shit. Kenny said that Jasper didn't reach out the day after their 11 minutes call, but apparently had him unblocked the entire time, waiting for him to reach out. What the fuck? Wait, you're waiting for him to reach out instead of you who actually has the problem here. Okay, whatever. I just cannot speak to them with how they're behaving. Kenny, shut the fuck up. What do you mean by how they're behaving? You fucking man-child. But Jojo, still being like the best person in this fucking community, tells him to directly talk to Jasper because that's how you handle shit like this. Then they go over to Jasper and convince him to talk to Kenny, but once Jasper does that, he gets no fucking response. So, Kenny, do you want Jasper to reach out to you or not? Seriously, when you keep flip-flopping like this, it's getting harder and harder to take you seriously. So, yeah, unsurprisingly, Kenny clearly did not focus on contacting the person he's accusing of shit. And this is not the last time this happened. But again, later. Okay, let's just finish up every stock real quick. Then there's a whole ass fucking convo where Jasper admits to his faults to Calm and the latter just cheering him up. And the rest is about Uptaunt, so quick speed round. He acted terribly around minors, which is very fucking vague, but whatever. And it should have apparently still not been a public issue. So even when they were right, that fucking twitlonger was moronic. Congrats, you two. Now this doc also ends with some statements, but considering that we have a 133 page doc to get back to, I'd rather skip them and tell you to look into this yourself. Seriously, these statements are a bit interesting. Jasper fucking cameos here. So can we now get to the big doc I want to talk about? No fuckers, we still have another 6-page one by Avery, Jasper and KG called Final Statement. So let's get into it real quick. Okay, this starts with a thank you message to Avery for the doc that I just discussed. KG Beepus has supposedly also apologized, but Kenny and Tia have stayed completely silent. It's also just clarified that KG's involvement in the twitlonger was rather minor. He may have published it, but he was essentially just used by Kenny and Tia as a shield so that they could run away. And it worked. KG ended up being heavily harassed. And he apparently owned up to his mistakes, so that's Gucci. Now, Kenny's and Tia's response leaves a lot to be desired. Because there is none. There's no closure, no reaching out, nothing. For fuck's sake, guys, say something when you slander someone. Then after things calmed down, Avery finally got Kenny to add Jasper again, but nothing was said. Kenny just talk to someone directly for once in your fucking life. He apparently acknowledged his mistakes in DMs with Avery, but never did anything to change. So yeah, that's basically the doc. We'll skip the final statements again. Let's just talk about the main fucking course already. No more interruptions. Okay, so this big doc starts by acknowledging that mistakes were made and they take accountability. An unclear "we" is used, and the formatting and the download function being turned off just shows that Falsecow made this doc. And since KG was no longer involved at this time, that basically means it's just him, Tia, and Kenny. And then we get a fucking legal disclaimer. Holy shit! That's one way to avoid your repercussions for the crime of slander. Okay, next up there's 2 Imgur threads again. One on Uptaunt, one on Jasper. I've already discussed the one on Jasper, so I'm skipping that, but the Uptaunt one, real quick. 1 through 3 show that Uptaunt, an adult, 18, for some reason the age isn't mentioned, was flirting with Kubikork, a minor, 16. Now, this leaves the question as to why the fuck Uptaunt's name was not mentioned directly. This is like literally the same shit they pulled with Revi. It's a lie by omission. Like, yeah, it's definitely worth criticizing, don't get me wrong, but you guys made him look like a pedophile here. Then the rest of this thread is either him putting NSFW shit on the timelines of his potentially underage followers and being overly sexual and making people uncomfortable, both of which are very valid complaints, I'll be real. Like I said, Uptaunt definitely deserves this criticism, I'm just having a problem with how Jasper is handled here. We can now get into the main meat of this all, but that does require some sub-chapters because of how massive this doc is. So we'll be going through the chapters of the doc. Introduction, regarding Jasper May's perspective on the situation, regarding the remaining inconsistencies within Jasper's statement, regarding sexual content, the exposure of such and given consent, regarding curse and the cautioned fictional glorification of abuse, and regarding speculations on OSDD system concerns. Couple things real quick. Why the fuck are you guys so hyper-focused on Jasper? What's with this stupid regarding thing? This is a call-out doc, don't be fucking artsy about it, just be direct. And I should probably just skip over at least half of these chapters, because those claims have never had any substance behind them. But for the sake of intellectual honesty, I will not skip over anything. Alright, first up that introduction. After the initial situation of Uptaunt, he kept posting NSFW shit, which, yeah, fair complaint. Or, well, it would be if they weren't on his ass for just answering someone's question because they are 17. Also, what the fuck is he supposed to do other than put no minors in his bio? Like, he's still a public figure. Then apparently a character design is NSFW because his belly is exposed and he has a minuscule bulge. I guess it's a fair concern, but it's funny how just implying that a penis exists is not NSFW content. This is what the FNF community has come to. Then Jasper also gets shit because he retweeted that design. Oh no. Eventually, Uptaunt did make an apology for the claims made against him, and that apology is getting quote-unquote dissected in this doc. I say quote-unquote because it has some massive fucking issues. So first of all, explaining why you did what you did, which in Uptaunt's case was an unhealthy coping mechanism, is apparently taking away accountability. Immediately after that bullshit, they complain that Uptaunt doesn't explain what he's coping with. A, shit like that can be insanely private, and B, you would have just said that he would be taking away accountability either way, so why bother? Then, Fosco has the audacity to call this a vague and dismissive apology, like he's one to talk. Then apparently they all have a problem with him following minors while still having no minors in his bio, which is weird because he just has their content on his timeline and not vice versa. So what exactly is the problem here? Next, they are supposedly concerned for the minors following him. To which I just gotta ask, are you sure that you're just not too ashamed to admit that you're wrong? He's not a fucking pedo and not an active threat to minors, even if he is fucked up in other ways. And this is everything on Uptaunt this doc has to offer. It ends on page 9 out of 133. So let's see what they have to say on Jasper then. Okay, before anything else, I just quickly want to say that constantly referring to Revived, one of Jasper's headmates, as Jasper/Rev is insanely disrespectful, as you have yet to prove that Jasper is faking OSDD. Seriously, quit fucking acting like you proved it. Now, I wouldn't even need to prove to you that Jasper's system believing that Kenji's subtweet is about Jasper is a rational thought, because, you know, it ended up being true, but I'll still do my best. Keep in mind that Kenny just randomly removed him from the server and threw a shit fit the day before in his DMs. You saying that there's no supportive evidence doesn't make it true. Kenny made it clear that Uptaunt and Jasper were thrown out for personal reasons, so it was clear that something was brewing considering how much of a dickhead Kenny is. Then they have the fucking gall to call someone who's talking about how they're rightfully worried that they'll be fucked over mass manipulation. Also, Revived saying "I fear for our safety" likely refers to the system, not Uptaunt, you cunts. Oh, and no, telling people to not approach Kenny about this until Jasper can is not fucking controlling. This isn't about stopping people from informing themselves through Kenny, this is about Jasper solving it privately, which Kenny seems to be fucking allergic to. Seriously, nobody ever talked to Jasper or Revived in this. Of course they don't want others to get involved and be misinformed. Jesus. Next, there's some comment about there being no contact until JoJo's intervention, which I just need to say, for the sake of a timeline, this was on March 3rd, literally a day after Jasper's and Kenny's last call, and then Jasper still reached out the same fucking day. Chill. Seriously, give people time to heal first, you self-obsessed brats! Instead of initiating a straightforward approach to Kenny's behavior, it was phrased as a genuine inquiry to Kenny's well-being. Well, yeah, duh, because Jasper wants to be kind and not immediately kick down Kenny's metaphorical door guns blazing. You don't know how the conversation could have gone if Kenny responded. Then Kenny is unnerved at Jasper having screenshots from the server, so he really does want to keep everything secret, huh? Revive then tries to speculate as to why Kenny would do all this. Then he comes up with an quite honestly understandable reason of false grooming allegations, as Jasper was 19 at the time and Uptaunt was 18. If you remember the age gap between Madzilla and Revi, this is nothing unprecedented. KG then comes in and tells him to relax and not bother, while Revive is stressed because Jasper was closing his fucking headmates off. It's definitely understandable to say he was aggressive. You don't shut down people like that while they're panicking. And then I'm just gonna give you a hilarious line that I will quote word by word. While we do acknowledge that Kenny's behavior around the time of the conversation was indeed vague. No, stop, full stop here. Be fucking clear, then people won't have to guess like this. You cannot blame someone for fucking panicking when they don't know what's gonna happen to them. Be clear, communicate. Fucking hell, Kenny. But when Jasper publicly talks about it and clearly states what happened, that gets called guilt tripping and emotional manipulation. You know, if a factual statement of what you did makes you look like horrible people, then maybe that's not manipulation, but you're just horrible people. Luckily, as said before, Jojo comes in for the rescue, makes Jasper approach Kenny. Kenny is being a twat about it and doesn't react. He apparently doesn't want to discuss anything because he knew of the private chat, for fuck's sake. Why do you keep jumping to conclusions like this, Kenny? Why are you being such a man-child, Kenny? And no, I'm not joking about that being Kenny's reason for not talking to him. I quote, "We suspect that Jasper/Rev may have been attempting to cover up what was being said in the off-topic channel, and that Jasper was not aware of the fact that Kenny held the knowledge of the contents within his messages to others." Seriously, where the fuck does this come from? Jasper is not this kind of person, and you fucking know that. Like, this is literally him doing what Jojo told him to. What the fuck do you want from him? And then when discussing the quote-unquote remaining inconsistencies within Jasper's statement, they talk about shit like Jasper rightfully complaining about not being contacted, but Falscow immediately blaming him for the same thing. Bro, that was Kenny's responsibility, and you know it. And also Jasper's good point of, I've made it expressly clear to everyone that if I do something out of line to hold me accountable, gets ignored, weirdly enough. Then it turns out that Jasper calling his mistake, which, reminder, is him not being strict enough of hiding NSFW from minors, a fuck up, is apparently an issue to these pieces of shit. And no, I do not care about what justification they give. This is just way too fucking pedantic. Then the funniest part of this doc. Nobody forced him to make his trauma public. Yes, you fucking did. You called Curse's story abuse glorification and denied his OSDD, both of which exist specifically due to Jasper's trauma. Curse exists for Jasper to vent, the OSDD is directly caused by it. So neither claim could properly be debunked without making the trauma public. This is coercion, just in an indirect manner. Then, in another attempt to make Jasper look as bad as possible, him explaining things how they are is called a way to garner sympathy. No, like I said before, it only looks the way because you guys acted like actual fucking sociopaths. Of course he looks sympathetic, he's the victim! Then, when Jasper says that he never drew anything out of line, which we have no reason to doubt, we saw what that NSFW image was, that's just called completely false. It gets called harmful and contradicts his apology of hurting minors, which just no. Okay, let me break this down for you. The apology was for letting minors have an easy way of seeing NSFW shit, not for drawing porn of their characters or anything of that sort. Got it? And then, ironically enough, they cause a lot of harassment to Jasper by lying about him, then say that harassment won't be tolerated. Genuinely the funniest shit I've ever seen. Next up, the shit about the sexual content. Okay, let's get into it. However, there's way too much reiteration on the anger thread, so I'm gonna be skimming through this. Plus, it was already kinda stupid before. There's this general point that checking someone's birthday through an ID would have been enough, which, yeah, fair enough, but you could have seriously just told Jasper in private and he would have made that change. He is approachable like that. And when talking about consent, you are correct, but missing something. It's only applying to yourself. The same way your parents don't consent for you, you don't consent for your fictional characters. Plus, fair use exists for a reason. Of fucking course, Jasper should probably ask first for a moral reason, but I don't consider that a violation of consent because it wasn't necessary in the first place. Then there's this weird ass point of a dark-skinned female character's purpose being to attract people into a cult being an example of a racist stereotype. That would definitely be valid if the character wasn't a fucking doll brought to life. This is not an actual person and not an actual representation of people. It's a doll, an object. As a matter of fact, I personally just consider it a lot more racist to compare an object that happens to look like a black person to an actual black person. But maybe that's just me. Then there's the horrible misdeed of Jasper's, which is giving proper trigger warnings for his account. And that somehow gets criticized. Yes, calling the account 14+ does invite minors, but if they stick around after reading suggestive themes right after, Jasper isn't really the one to blame. The fuck can he do? Then there's also another point. You might remember the Amor situation like a year ago. There was also this other person involved called Blue Skies TV. They got out of for some shit. Jasper was heavily conflicted as they were kinda close, but did dip when the weird shit dropped. Part of why he was so conflicted was that Blue even defended Jasper from that bullshit twitlonger back in March. Now it is kinda weird that Jasper reacted to Blue's expose with a send-off, but ultimately he still left Blue behind and no longer associates with him. So what's the issue? Some people are just conflicted. Some people are just complex and not as cartoonishly one-dimensional as this docs offers. Alright, so let's talk about the curse thing again, because that's so much fun. I should realistically skip this. This has always been bullshit, but for the sake of honesty, let's do this. Oh, but it's not clearly stated to prevent. Fuck off, it's not glorified in any way either. And when they say glorify, they apparently mean focusing on just the abuse regardless of how negatively it's presented. They also say that there is no supportive evidence claiming that this is an abuse story for the sake of coping. Oh, so now you can look into Jasper's head? I might just say that the escapism stuff is also completely stupid because it has nothing to do with abuse glorification. But seriously, something not being explicitly stated to be an event story doesn't make it abuse glorification, you pedantic twats. And the ableism section is no better. The point isn't, as Falscow says, that Curse can't be a hero due to being disabled. The point is that he no longer views himself as one because he can no longer run at his trademark sonic speed. For fuck's sake! And that point on the super form is just pushing it. Seriously, this is just bitching about the fact that he's sitting down instead of levitating, which would realistically just tire him out more. Then there's more bitching about traumatized Mobians not being curable because, surprise surprise, trauma sticks with you for life, you can only learn to deal with it. And yes, children can also be traumatized. I know it's horrible, but it happens. Like, seriously, this is still meant to be horror. Why is the vagueness of what happened to Cream an issue? And can I just say that trauma blackening suggests that the trauma turns one into a monster is nonsense? Like, no the fuck it doesn't. Curse himself is the prime counterexample. He's the hero of the story and still has a fuck ton of that trauma blackening. So wow guys, you really just leaked Jasper's personal trauma for the sake of commenting on Tails? Literally, why did you share this? Seriously, this Tails part is so fucking irrelevant. Oh, no, wait, it actually proves that this isn't fucking abuse glorification, as it's shown to be rightly terrifying. What the fuck are you doing? Oh, boo-hoo, nothing but pain and misery. Yeah, it's a fucking melodrama, that's how this shit works. Then that dead naming part is also random. Is Sonic even Curse's dead name? The dead name was never confirmed, and since he's trans-mask and the canon cis-male Sonic is called, well, Sonic, it only makes sense that his non-dead name, you know, his current one, is Sonic. Why the fuck do you think Sonic is his dead name? Wait, do you think Curse is his real name now? Who the fuck names themselves Curse? And yeah, the rest of this is just more repeated nonsense. We'll skip straight to the final chapter of the doc. Now, about that OSTD shit, again, I should just fucking skip it because of how shit the Twitlonger handled it, but let's see. It starts with a disclaimer that they aren't directly stating that the OSTD is faked, but that they are bringing attention to the inconsistencies in Jasper's behavior. That's legal talk for, we want you to think it's untrue without taking accountability if it isn't. Next, I'm just gonna repeat that the speed of the splits mean nothing, as Jasper's fuck ton of trauma would make this frequent splitting possible. Also, not only are fictive alters just generally a thing, which explain the sheer abundance of them in Jasper's system, but they're also not neatly separated, as they can build a personality of their own, explaining how Revived was formed out of basically nothing. Also, Jasper was a fucking co-owner of the Revived character, yet that was unmentioned for some reason. Again, another lie by omission. But seriously, OSTD and DID are not this fucking simple. Please don't spread such misinfo about either of those. Oh, and as far as I know, the fictive alter can very much know that they're fictive. There's also some weird point about inner communication, which is purely based on Jasper not seeing a therapist, as though that negates all possibility of said inner communication. Also, yes, Revived can learn from Spoiled, even if the latter isn't an alter. It's called source memories, and those can vary from the source. Then there's also some stupid point about that original X shit, which is just Revived's lore, so it makes sense. Like, what, does it need to stick to the original source or not? Make up your fucking mind. Then the part about Revived knowing about other X's is also stupid. It's just appealing to probability. Then there's some barely comprehensible critique of how Jasper acted during a panic attack, and then an alter taking over. I don't fucking know, it's just weird. Oh, here's an actually interesting part. People with OSTD only have one ANP. ANP is short for apparently normal part. It basically means the host alter. It still only changes likelihood though, it's nothing binary, but it certainly is interesting. And it's followed up by yet another interesting point. The protector's not helping during a mental breakdown. Now, we'd be able to check that if you didn't censor who took over in that moment, you twat. So we don't know if that's actually the case here. Then, holy shit, 3 good points in a row, the subsystem part. It's definitely something worth looking into, but every instance of OSTD is very different. You cannot judge one case by the metrics of another one. Okay, this next one's a doozy again. Basically, Jasper wants the exit community to be safe for DID or OSTD systems, which apparently puts minors who have it in danger by making their disorders known. Yeah, you're definitely not missing the point that Jasper is trying to change the community so that people with those disorders can come out and speak about it without being in fucking danger. That's literally what Jasper is trying to fight here. Then they eventually updated the chapter and spoke about shit like there only being one host now, woo. And they overanalyzed the phrase not on the market to the point of twisting it. I will definitely say though that not using the same phrase for the other child alter in the system is kinda weird. Then the focus shifts over to some new Sonic alter with its timing. Again, this point is stupid, that's just how the shit can sometimes work. But please do note that gatekept doesn't necessarily mean revived to gatekeeper now. It's just a term that's also used in other contexts. Honestly, overall, there are some valid and interesting points in this chapter, but it's blurred out by all this actual genuine misinformation. Christ. But at least we have the dog over now, I guess. As usual, we'll skip the statements, although they do show who worked on this fucking dog. Callum, a former owner of the Encyclopedia, yeah, the one Kenny runs now, Kenny, Tia, Noise, who is False Cow's fiance, and Falscow himself. This dog was a disgusting train wreck, just desperately trying to double down on already debunked accusations. Genuinely, all this proves is that someone has a vendetta against Jasper. Are there things to criticize Jasper for? Yes, but not like this. Also, for having Jasper and Uptaunt in the title, this focused way too much on Jasper. I'll show you something you can actually knock Uptaunt for when you're not framing him as a fucking pedophile. Let's get into the next chapter.
Remember before how Rightburst sent his hive mind after someone? Yeah, Gabriel got in contact with that guy. They started off with the Sonic.exe build that had a doc saying Revy is innocent. After Cyrtez pointed it out, Rightburst and Uptaunt sent their fans after him who told him to kill himself. Real mature. Cyrtez then reveals the tweets of how he himself didn't say Revy is innocent, as well as some failed burn with the FNAF song. Only later did Rightburst admit that Cyrtez wasn't a Revy supporter. He didn't apologize, didn't tell people to stop harassing him. That's it. Oh, and Uptaunt stayed dead silent about it. But when Cyrtez asked Rightburst to tell people to stop, he said that he doesn't think Uptaunt really cares that much. That sure paints him a good image, doesn't it? But it gets better. As Gabriel mentioned in his last video, Uptaunt sexually harassed people. After EXE Burner's call out, he went inactive, then left completely a week or two after that. Before doing so, he made an audio to explain why and brought up how his friends got cancelled and at blows. Just a hunch, but he probably got scared of the skeletons in his own closet. Either way, this whole thing is hilarious and a tangent. Okay, let's get back to the point. Speaking of curse owners getting harassed, let's talk about Madman Halloween. GPT and teased at a dog calling out Madman and how terrible she is, but nothing came out of that. Or did it? We'll see eventually. What's weird though is Madman responding saying there's no proof when there's a screen cap of her admitting to shit right there. Either way, it would change nothing about how the community mistreated her. Let's go over 4 cases in particular. 1. After the EXE burner callout, Avery gave ownership of Sonic.exe Anniversary Edition to Madman. Unfortunately, GameReel didn't find out about that in time, so it didn't really catch any actual proof of abuse, but the QRTs, along with the other situations, speaks for itself. 2. Rain is the director of EX Eternal and at one point in time had to share that spot with Madman. Apparently she forced herself into that position, and then composer Churdney Gurney joined the team, didn't like another member, so Reina gave him permission to kick the guy out. After getting called out, Reina framed Madman for it, including faking a screenshot of giving Churdney permission. She apologized not too long after, but was really vague about it. Apparently this is also a part of her sending porn to minors, but we got nothing about that here. Madman later made an unnecessarily long response, which can be summed up with making her suicidal, as well as not wanting to work with Reina anymore, but still wishing her the best. Three. To start, Madman shared a now scrapped idea of adding a fat fetish version of Faker to EX Eternal. She got harassed to hell and back for it. This led her to becoming suicidal, along with openly admitting to planning on overdosing. Then, KG Peppers steps in and says some stupid shit. He deleted most of it, but we at least have one screen cap. Overall, he just reacts with no empathy whatsoever, which actually lets people realize how much of a piece of shit he can be. Soon enough, KG drops a 100% real, totally genuine apology. Eventually, Madman gets better again, with KG apparently helping out. As expected, people immediately act like they're cool with him again. Because who cares that he's a fucking psychopath, willing to even start shit like this to begin with? Oh, and this isn't just a one-time thing either. KG also used Divide's death as an excuse to shit on Revy. What the actual fuck is wrong with you? 4. Before we start this one, we'll need some context. Back in October, BandBuds got cancelled for racism, when all that happened was just that he used the N-word, soft A no less. Even then, it was handled privately months ago. Regardless, he took full accountability and still got cancelled, taking Lullaby version 2 with him in the process. Eventually, Madman clowned on someone for calling BandBuds racist. After a certain Com Gaming QRT, she got harassed yet another time. Seriously, the abuse was insane. Like, there was this meme that implied Madman was anti-BLM. It got to the point that not even an explanation of any kind would work. But instead, she got accused of racism and transphobia left and right. Admittedly, she did have a point. It did look like people wanted her dead. But if there's one good thing from this, it's the rare moment of KG Bubba's actually acting like a sane human being. There's more about Madman to mention, but let's talk about that later. For now, let's talk about the guy who was indirectly responsible for that last situation I mentioned.
Okay, so before I say anything on Com, I think it's important to address my apology. Yes, it still stands. I made a hasty assumption based on KG and Com confirming, in quotes, the dogs last time. However, I have since further investigated and found out some deeper shit. I'm not saying that he isn't homeless though, as that's pretty hard to prove, but I am saying that the way he handles the situation deserves criticism. Okay, so this may be a minor point, but I still think it's worth discussing. What exactly is homelessness? When you hear the word, you might think of someone living on the streets, for example. Hell, the Merriam-Webster definition of homeless is having no home or permanent place of residence. But Com isn't that. He did state that he lives in hotels, and that doesn't necessarily make him saying that he's homeless a lie, but it can make people think that he's in a worse situation than he truly is, which might in turn make them donate more. Like, for fuck's sake, he got like $3,000 through just Avery's old Ko-Fi for him, and who knows about all the other platforms through which people donate to him. Now, of course, I'm not trying to say that Com could not be in a bad financial situation, but this can definitely be seen as him exaggerating his circumstances. Also, there's a few questionable terms he uses at times, you know, like house or rent, even though neither apply to him. And his excuse honestly still leaves a lot to be desired, but that's neither here nor there. Now, if I were to say what the best thing to come out of my mistake in the last video was, it would be that more people question Com, leading to him finally giving us the timeline of events that led to him being homeless. Through it, he also finally explained some questions we had. For example, how he had internet, why he got evicted in the first place, why his uncle is in jail, etc, etc. So, as the guy who made the claim against him, I think it's only fair to show how consistent this timeline is with how he acted throughout the year. So let's start with late January. First of all, his house catches on fire, then he and his family stays in hotels during the repairs, but the mom didn't pay everything correctly, so they were evicted. Now, he did talk about being evicted on January 29th and 31st, but a house fire was never mentioned, and neither was his mom not paying anything properly. But okay, whatever, he was evicted, we know that part. Let's talk about what happens afterwards. In the first months, plural, he is in a hotel with public Wi-Fi. He eventually finds out that his mother was selling her body, whatever that means, and he was therefore done with her. That was never mentioned before. Then his uncle gets out of jail, which we know happened on March 13th or earlier. Then, after that falling out with his mom, which was presumably in March, he eventually started living in a hotel with his uncle. That was at least during April 16th, but most realistically also before and after. He then eventually got a Moxie hotspot, which explains his constant internet usage. That was never mentioned before. He also worked a job at KFC with his uncle and said uncle's girlfriend, I think. He never mentioned a job or work of any kind, so yeah. Then, and this is really weird, the uncle and the GF argue, the GF runs against the wall, she slams into the wall after being warned, and then, weeks later, used that against the uncle. And then he went to prison. Okay, so according to Com's tweets, the uncle went to prison around June 22nd, so yeah, realistic time frame I guess. But the reason behind the uncle being in prison was generally never mentioned, and I'm gonna be honest, that story sounds like bullshit. If the girlfriend had actually run against the wall so fucking quickly that she was still injured enough weeks later so that the uncle could go to prison for it, then she must have gone fast enough to make Sonic the Hedgehog blush. Also, you're trying to tell me that none of the people that were there ever testified in the favor of your uncle? Even though they straight up warned her to not run into that fucking wall? Seriously, Com? Then, okay, he starts living alone, and the cops just let him, for some reason. And he thinks that he got doxxed through a Steak and Shake Wi-Fi. Okay, no, this is not how any of this works. And I'll get to why in a second, okay? Just really quick about everything that happened after the dox. The mod died, and now he has to deal with everything. Since there's nothing to prove or disprove here, let's just get to the dox already. I'm gonna have to preface this by saying that I found the dox. The exact address and everything surrounding it. No, I will not share it. Don't even ask. However, I will roughly describe it. It was an address set in a rich looking neighborhood without either a hotel or a Steak and Shake close by. Keep this in mind, okay? The doxed address cannot in any way fit to the story he's telling. Okay. When he was eventually called out, he had a massive thread talking about why he doesn't fake his situation. And also I just want to say, no, he never said he wasn't homeless. Don't spread misinformation like that. However, he does get quite weird when talking about the dogs. After my video, he claimed to have never seen it, yet for some reason still heavily panicked when he first found out about it. Why would a homeless person be worried about being doxxed? But whatever. It can just be a general panic, you know, it is something frightening. Then he says that doxing is also IP, but it was a specific address that got doxed, and you can't get that through IP. Like, it gets even weirder when he says that it's through public Wi-Fi. As a quick reminder, the IP address gives you a rough geolocation at most. You can only get an address through the internet if the person you're doxing gives it away themselves. Plus, the IP address for public fucking Wi-Fi can't connect to a personal address in any fucking way. So tell me, Calm, how the fuck does all this make sense together? Oh, and are we ever gonna talk about his €200 keyboard? Straight up, he once posted a video of himself vibing to some song playing on his laptop while also having a separate keyboard connected to the laptop, and someone confirmed for me that it was 200 fucking euros, also roughly around $200. Jesus fucking Christ. There's perfectly fine, cheap keyboards that also have RGB lighting. Why the fuck does he have this expensive one? Oh, and don't even say he had it before, because then why not sell it for money? His laptop already has a fucking keyboard. Still, I do want to say that this is not conclusive and that people still have a right to defend him in this. Yes, even Rightburst, although Calm definitely fucking hates him. That's not even a joke, I can prove that later. Okay, this wasn't originally part of the script, but I'm gonna bring it up here because people would likely mention it if I don't. It turns out that after Avery got cancelled thanks to the Exaburner situation, they kinda left without paying Calm all of his donated money. But that situation has been resolved, so hey, that's great. So, all in all, is Calm faking homelessness? I don't know. It's definitely possible considering all these different question marks here. And yes, individually they would be unimportant, but together it's kind of a death by 1,000 paper cut scenario. But to be completely honest, Calm is the type of guy who shares private info easily. For example, his uncle being trans. This is not a need to know basis, but an I overshare very easily basis. So why the fuck is basic shit like the fire, his hotspot, or his job never mentioned? This makes him look as though he made basic plot points up in January or before that, and now tries to cover up the plot holes he accidentally created. However, this is just speculation. Do not come to hasty conclusions because of this, and do not fucking harass him because of this. Okay. Now, the next chapter is about a person that Calm tried and failed to defend despite how fucked up they are. Let's talk about Jackie.
Okay, so I'm probably gonna get a bit loud in some parts, so strap in and turn down your volume some. So, Gabriel already mentioned before that Jackie made a leaked build that shows your IP address. There's even this little chat that proves she did it. Apparently it happened right before that, but the dates are missing, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. That's not the focus though, let's talk about something back in August. Remember the Encore icons that were just doodled over? Yeah, Jackie admitted herself to doing that. Made them so raw my ass. After Gabriel found out, he informed a large Linnea who called her out on it soon after. She made a definitely real apology, downplayed Divide's role in making the icons, and then pulled attention from herself, which is disingenuous as fuck. Not too long after, she made a thread on Twitter mentioning them being placeholders, calls the Divide art misinfo, but also dug around, and saying Divide didn't make them at all, which all debatedly makes it worse. Oh, and she also linked a thread Calm made. Let's dissect that. Out of nowhere, you say Scorch made all free plate art just to disprove the claim. You also QRT'd something that attempts to prove Divide is part in Triple Trouble. You also say there's nothing else he worked on, but it's hard to believe you when you lied about it before this. When Revi gets brought up, you say that not everything your goddess says is 100% true. If anything, she's your guardian angel since she forced Gabriel to apologize to you. The fact that both you and Jackie would downplay a dead man's involvement in something just to clear your own names is the most foul shit I've seen in this community. It's bad enough that his work got pissed on, but this is just horrid. But yeah, of course Calm would disrespect the dead, he disrespected the living too. But as usual, we'll get to that later though. But for now, let's go over how Jackie made a thread not addressing the drama. I say that with heavy air quotes, you'll see why. Thankfully though, Gabriel got screenshots with the name Jackie.exe. First up is acknowledging the existence of some videos addressing the incidents in this community. This would apply to Gabriel, but she brings up misgendering her and showing her Twitter and Discord accounts, neither of which Gabriel has done himself. She then says she wants to dissociate with the drama. It's like she knows she fucked up and doesn't want to face it directly. To combat this, she attempts to get rid of the name Jackie.exe, which I shall follow. by now calling her jackass instead. Oh, and she then discloses that she still works on the months she did before the thread happened. So yeah, only 2 tweets don't address any kind of drama. That was a big fat lie. In short, Jackass is a huge scumbag. Now that that's over with, let's just go over some miscellaneous stuff.